Joining us now, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, CIA-trained former senior intelligence officer, and also his book, Operation Dark Heart, Spycraft on Special Operations on the Front Lines of Afghanistan, is a must-read. And because of your book, I wanted to ask you specifically about Hillary Clinton's email controversy. Yes. I know you're laughing, but I think you know where I'm going here. I mean, one of the big headlines from the press conference yesterday, Tony Shaffer, was the Secretary of State saying that in the 4 years that she headed the State Department, she never once set out a classified email. Now, I look at your book, Dark Heart, Operation Dark Heart, and pretty much 40% of your book is redacted. The Pentagon came in there, and you released it that way. You've got all these black marks throughout the book showing what you can't say. Tell me the distinctions here between classified information, sensitive information. The State Department says they need to redact things out of Hillary's emails. Well, then, was it good to put out something on an unsecure server that may need to be redacted by the State Department? And also, isn't it possible she received classified information? Go, Tony, go.
That's a great question, and it's all in the eye of the beholder. Simply put, Larry, the stuff in Dark Heart, we found unclassified sources in every instance, and yet the government said, well, because I say it, it's different. So the same thing here. Gee, if Hillary Clinton says something, it may be different. So this is where, it's all about gazing through this kind of crystal ball, trying to discern, is this really classified, is not.
Hold on, I just want to refocus on what you just said. You wrote your book based on the information you had, and in your judgment, it was fine to publish. And then the government came in afterwards, before it was published, and said, no, Tony Shaffer, you can't release this information. So they overruled your judgment. Who overrules Hillary Clinton's judgment?
Well, that's the good question here, and I think this is where you need to have her emails put out in a way which is reviewable by both Congress, by Dowdy and his folks, and frankly, the American public. But let me say something about the very nature of what she did and how bad it is. People like me, back in the days when I was doing what we call offensive information operations, would target people like her in foreign governments because of their arrogance, because we knew people like her would not follow the rules. So, it's naturally something we want to do. If a foreign leader has certain thoughts about certain things, we want that. That's more important, by the way, Larry, than classified information, because it shows intent. It shows how leadership are making decisions. So the fact that she had an iPad, for example, as reported by Captain Heritage at Fox yesterday, which was not securable, the intelligence community actually tried to secure it and was not successful. She is a primary target for foreign intelligence services, and trust me, they were all over her.
Two things. Yesterday, I noticed she said that she did not send any classified information out in an email. She did not say that she never received classified information. And secondly, talk about the distinction between classified and sensitive. I mean, there still could be stuff on that email server that, as you mentioned, could be very, very helpful to our adversaries.
Exactly. And I think that's the point we have to look at here, Brian, is the fact that if you put it all together, one email by itself may not be classified, but you put it with something else, then it becomes highly classified. And whatever's on that server, I would consider at least secret because of all the amalgamated information. Secondly, your point is well taken. She may have received information which she may not have even responded to, but which is classified. And let me tell you, if you Google on the Internet right now, you would find things which the government considers classified. I could point you in directions on the Internet where things are considered classified. And so I know for a fact that those things that the government considers classified, I'm sure are in those emails. So again, she's trying to argue a point which is not winnable, that she very likely did have classified information, and just if you put it all together, you amalgamate it all together, what is on this server is highly classified.
All right. Let me change topics if I could, because we've been having this discussion about Iran. On Capitol Hill, Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas, junior member of the Senate, he basically came up with a letter that said, hey, dear Iran, if you go through with this deal with Barack Obama on nuclear weapons and your nuclear program, understand that, it could be changed by a future president. A future Congress could come in, and that we don't consider this a treaty. We consider this an executive action. And the administration, the Obama administration, has been absolutely apoplectic about this, saying you're interfering with the national security and the foreign policy of this nation.
Well, I don't want to say quid pro quo here, but, Nancy Pelosi went over under George Bush 43 and actually dealt with Assad. Did not hide the fact that she was going against the Bush foreign policy. And what's worse, during the Reagan era back in 1983, Senator Ted Kennedy wrote a letter to Andropov, the then premier of the Soviet Union, basically saying, hey, if the Democrats win, we want to deal with you Russians more directly. So this is not the first time this has happened. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. But in this case, Brian, this is simply, as far as I can tell after reading this, a restatement of the Constitution. Any treaty, any real treaty, has to be approved by 2/3 of the Senate. So any treaty which is before them, which does not meet requirements regarding constitutionality or what they want to see, it's not going to be approved. So essentially what they're stating is the obvious and frankly, the correct answer.
Hey, while we're talking about Tom Cotton and his ability to sort of push the narrative here, I'm wondering if, Tony, from your perspective, the president has sort of opened himself up for this. Very rarely does a negotiation at this level occur without a lot of, participation with members of the Senate, because he knows that the Senate is going to have to ratify that agreement at some point. Do you fear that maybe the president has no intention of asking the Senate to sign off on this?
That's an excellent point. And just so you guys know my point of reference, one of the folks I've talked about this is Bud McFarlane, former national security advisor to President Reagan. And yes, Bud talked about how they worked at multiple levels constantly to try to get buy-in from everybody involved. That includes educating the American public constantly about what was going on regarding some of the START treaties with the Russians, as well as members of Congress. It was a total engagement constantly. So the fact that they're trying to keep this whole deal, especially the details of the deal, secret, does not bode well for the process of transparency. And this may be, another case of we need to approve the treaty to see what's in the treaty, the Nancy Pelosi thing regarding Obamacare.
What could go wrong there?
Yeah, because this is, you don't want to keep details like this classified or out of the public eye. One of the biggest concerns I have as an expert is the IAEA. If you're going to do this, Larry, you've got to have the guarantee that the IAEA, the nuclear watchdog of the UN, is going to have unfettered, indefinite, complete open access to all the potential sites of uranium enrichment. That's not on the table as far as I can tell. So unless you have that, the whole thing becomes completely a work of science fiction.
Tony Shaffer, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Great for joining us today.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciated.